Alright, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking apart one of the absolutely biggest pop music controversies in recent memory. We're looking at the massive, record-breaking hit Flowers by Miley Cyrus and the intense copyright lawsuit filed by Tempo Music Investments. Now, Tempo Music claims that Flowers is an unauthorized derivative work, essentially a copy, of Bruno Mars's 2012 hit When I Was Your Man. It's a fascinating case that has literally set the internet ablaze. So today, we're going to objectively break down the source material, the music theory, and the data to understand exactly what is going on here.
Okay, let's dive into this. To answer the ultimate question of whether Flowers was actually stolen, we have to do something really important first. We have to separate the internet rumors and the obvious lyrical nods from the actual underlying musical DNA of the track. Because, it's so easy to hear two songs that share a similar theme and just assume they share the same musical structure. But as we'll see, the composition and the production, well, they tell a much deeper story.
Now, there is an undeniable connection in the words here, for sure. It's widely acknowledged that Flowers operates as an answer song. It systematically flips the regrets expressed in Bruno Mars's When I Was Your Man. Mars sings, "I should have bought you flowers and held your hand," mourning a lost relationship, right? And Cyrus responds with this huge message of self-reliance: "I can buy myself flowers and I can hold my own hand." It's a direct, clever lyrical clapback. But, and this is key, a lyrical retort, historically speaking, is not the same thing as musical theft. So, that brings us to the crucial point. Our thesis for this explainer is that while the lyrics are clearly responding to Mars's track, an actual structural breakdown of the music objectively proves the compositions are entirely distinct. The lawsuit claims there are similarities in the melodic and harmonic material, but when we actually look at the sheet music and the specific production choices, a completely different story emerges. Section 1. A Tale of Two Tempos. Let's start at the very foundation of any song, its pacing. This immediately separates the two tracks before we even look at a single note. Right off the bat, these two songs occupy entirely different sonic spaces. Flowers strides right in at a brisk 118 beats per minute. It's got this disco-funk groove, a steady, driving pulse that just makes you want to move. At 118 BPM, Flowers sits in the exact same upbeat, disco pocket as Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive or Dua Lipa's Don't Start Now. Now, When I Was Your Man, on the other hand, sits at a really slow, emotional 73 beats per minute. That's much closer to something like Adele's Someone Like You. It's a traditional, stripped-back piano ballad. One is literally built for a Saturday night dance floor, the other is built for quiet reflection. Section 2. Comparing the chords. Moving on from tempo, let's examine their harmonic paths. Tempo Music's lawsuit specifically claims that the chord progressions are duplicated. So let's look at the actual chords. Okay, it's true that both sad songs happen to start their progression on an A minor chord, but honestly, tens of thousands of hip-hop songs start on A minor. Just think of Losing My Religion by REM or Stairway to Heaven. It's what happens next that really matters. Miley's progression loops through A minor, D minor, G, and C. Bruno's progression wanders from A minor to C, to D minor, to G, and then introduces a G7 chord. So right after that initial starting point, their harmonic paths just immediately diverge into totally different directions. See, Flowers relies heavily on what we call a four-chord loop. This is a repetitive, hypnotic cycle that serves as the engine for steady dance-pop tracks. It's very meditative and highly rhythmic. This loop is the exact same driving force you'd hear in massive modern hits like Ed Sheeran's Shape of You or The Weeknd's Blinding Lights. When I Was Your Man absolutely does not use this loop. It uses a much more complex, traditional ballad structure that actually changes and evolves to match the emotional swells of a solo piano performance. They are fundamentally different approaches to songwriting. Section 3. Melodies and vocal ranges. Now that we've covered the chords, let's shift our focus to the actual melodies sung by the artists. Because if the chords are the foundation, the melody is the house built on top of it. Miley Cyrus utilizes a melody composed mostly of simple, steady quarter notes. Her vocal range in the verses is really tight, creating this rhythmic mantra very similar to Taylor Swift's Anti-Hero, which just completely grounds the listener. Bruno Mars's melody, however, is rhythmically complex. He incorporates these massive vocal leaps, utilizing his expansive range to convey deep heartbreak. So you get Miley's delivery, which is cool and steady, compared to Bruno's, which is sprawling and highly dynamic. Section 4. The Power of Silence. But you know what? Perhaps the biggest differentiator isn't in the notes they sing, but in the spaces where they sing nothing at all. Let's look at the production techniques that make Flowers a masterpiece of modern arrangement.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates one of the coolest tricks in modern pop music, the slingshot effect. In a standard dance song, you totally expect a heavy kick drum right on the first beat of the chorus. But in Flowers, the producers leave beat 1 completely empty. They pull the instrumentation all the way back. It creates this momentary, unexpected tension, literally like winding up a slingshot, so that when the beat finally drops on beat 2, the release feels absolutely explosive. It's the exact same genius trick Charlie Puth uses to build massive tension in his song Attention.
This specific technique relies on dynamic impact. By using that split second of negative space, the producers are literally tricking the brain into thinking the chorus is massive and loud without actually just turning up the volume dial. It's surgical contrast. That silence provides a psychological amplification that gives Flowers its incredible strutting energy. And you simply won't find this kind of rhythmic displacement in a traditional piano ballad like When I Was Your Man. There's another really unique production choice here, the use of a nano hook. In Flowers, you'll hear this distinct 70s-style oboe-like synthesizer. This instrument acts as a responder. Miley sings a line, and then this synth fills the negative space she leaves behind. It adds this lush, vintage soft rock flair to the track, giving it texture and keeping your ear totally engaged during the pauses. It functions a lot like those iconic repeating synths in ABBA's Gimme Gimme Gimme, adding an undeniable hook without relying on the main vocal.
Section 5, a distinct pop anthem. Let's look at how all these elements resulted in historic success. When you combine those 4-chord loops, that slingshot of silence, and these vintage textures, you get a song that didn't just top the charts, it dominated them. 57. That is the record-breaking number of weeks Flowers spent at #1 on the Billboard Adult Contemporary chart. Think about that. It became the longest-running chart topper in the over 60-year history of that specific chart. And it achieved this incredible longevity, not just because of the celebrity gossip surrounding it, but because of its universally appealing, incredibly sturdy musical architecture.
Let's break down the exact fusion of those ingredients one last time. Flowers is built on a 4-on-the-floor disco kick drum. It features a staccato, bouncing bass line that actually borrows heavily from country and Mexican norteño music, which is what gives it that unique twang. And then it coats all of this in 70s soft rock synths. It is a masterful cross-genre blend that manages to sound both entirely fresh and instantly familiar all at once. Which brings us to our final thought. The lyrics of Flowers are undeniably a clever, empowering response to the regrets sung by Bruno Mars a decade earlier. But musically? Well, we've seen the 118 BPM tempo, the wildly differing chord paths, the steady quarter note melodies, and the brilliant use of negative space. So, ask yourself, if a track is built on driving disco kicks, a bouncing norteño bass line, and a slingshot of silence, could it ever truly be considered a copy of a traditional piano ballad? It's a fascinating look at the very thin line between brilliant lyrical inspiration and musical originality. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep listening closely.